Hello, welcome to the Lewiston Tribune Podcast, episode number 23. This is Matt Baney, managing editor of the Lewiston Tribune, here at the Berry Coast studio. I'm joined this week by business editor Elaine Williams. Elaine, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you
Good.
for having me.
You bet. And on production, online editor Trevin Pixley. And on this episode, we're going to talk to Elaine about her story that's going to be in the Sunday Tribune. She recently visited a new venture that Happy Day Restaurants is working on. It's called Happy Day Local. Elaine, you went there, you talked to Tobe Finch. Can you tell us a little about Happy Day Local?
Yeah, so let's start a little bit by talking about Happy Day restaurants. I think people in the region are generally familiar with the business, but just kind of to get started here, Happy Day Restaurants is a local chain that has 14 restaurants, and they're restaurants that pretty much everybody is familiar with. So, like Tomato Brothers in Clarkston, Zanies in Lewiston, those are some of the restaurants in the Happy Day restaurant family. And so, Happy Day Local is a new effort of the business to make more of the ingredients on their menu be from local ranchers and farmers. And it's really interesting because this is something that they have been working on since 2018 in various ways. As early as 2018, they had beef from local vendors on their menu at Tomato Brothers and Mystic. But when the pandemic rolled around, this really, really accelerated. I mean, like so many things in the Lewiston-Clarkston Valley, it kind of rolls back to bite-sized steak. If you're talking about the culinary scene, you can't talk too long before you eventually get there. And so there were a number of things going on, but one of the things that happened was that Happy Day had an unexpected increase in the price that they were going to have to pay for the beef for their bite-sized steak. They've been using round steak, and round steak is generally it's an underutilized cut of meat, so it's typically a pretty affordably priced meat. At any rate, so when this happened, what Happy Day did, instead of accepting the price, they took a different approach. They decided that instead of getting the beef in the pieces that arrive on your plate, the smaller pieces that arrive on your plate, when you're ordering bite size, that they would order the beef in these bigger pieces and then cut it in-house into bite-sized steak. So that was one thing that happened, and then another thing that happened that was really significant was that Tobe Finch, and he's the president of Happy Day Restaurants. The company, as a lot of people know, was founded by his dad, Bruce Finch. But anyway, so Tobe Finch, second generation in the business. At the time, he was in prayer because there were just so many things that were happening that were just things that he hadn't seen in the industry, and obviously he's been in the business for a long time. At any rate, and so he had a premonition that something was going to happen and that he needed to prepare, and this was a premonition that he felt that God was delivering to him. So out of this, Happy Day decided to do an incredibly large order of food. $150,000 worth of food was the amount of food that they ordered in a single order, which was something that was unprecedented for them. And what they did when they were deciding what to buy was they looked at everything they were serving in their restaurants, and they tried to identify ingredients that they could buy so that they could continue to deliver the same menu items even if there were food shortages. And so they bought things like pasta and canned goods, so some things that could last for a long time just on the shelf, And then other things they purchased were perishables like meat. And so additionally, along with purchasing all of this food, they had to figure out how to store it. And they ended up building a huge freezer. They had some components for the freezer at B&C Meats, the former B&C Meats, where their catering operation was located. And then their maintenance crew built the freezer box for this. Had they not done that, they would have been a year out to get a freezer that was big enough to store all this food. At any rate, the order arrives, and 3 months later, sure enough, the food shortages that they had this premonition were going, that the food shortages that they were concerned about did in fact materialize, and ordering the food turned out to be a good strategy. But both of these things, in terms of putting a function that had previously been done by another vendor in-house, and then also developing the storage capacity, those two things are now kind of foundational to what we see with Happy Day Local.
Okay. And their new facility for Happy Day Local is behind the Lewiston Center Mall, and you went there. Can you tell us a bit about the facility there?
Oh yeah, it's super interesting because I'm certain that many of us who have lived in Lewiston for a long time have no idea that it's even there. And it's 24,000 square feet. It's not attached to the mall, and I mean, and this is where Happy Day Local is based. The centerpiece of this is a USDA certified butcher shop. That butcher shop cuts meat for Happy Day restaurants. So it does things like hamburger patties and fajita meat and prime rib. So it does some things. It does a lot of things for Happy Day restaurants. But because it's USDA certified, it has the capability of cutting that meat for other restaurants or supermarkets. So there's a lot of potential there. So the butcher shop is the thing that's up and going. It's the centerpiece. And then there's, once again, lots of room in the building. So so there's a lot of projects that are in various stages. And one of them is an indoor growing system where Happy Day is working on growing things like fennel, romaine lettuce, and parsley inside under some artificial lights. So that's one piece. There's a large kitchen where they envision experimenting with ancient grains to see how you can bake those into breads. And then there's yet another kitchen where there's all kinds of just really large kitchen equipment. So like there's pots that are the size of washing machines almost, and big ovens. And they see that as a place to do batch cooking. And then there's some big freezers too. And one thing that they're thinking will happen in this place, and you can't really see it based on what is there now, but they see it as being a center where people who raise things like tomatoes or eggs or peppers can bring their produce or their meat or any kind of agricultural product. They can bring it there, and then Happy Day Local will have arranged buyers. And so it kind of saves legwork on both sides. The buyers can go to a place where there's a lot of inventory, and then the sellers aren't having to find people to purchase their heads of lettuce, like one customer at a time in a farmer's market. And keep in mind, like, I think that Tobe would agree that farmers markets are, great things. But if you're a producer and you're trying to, sell your carrots, one bunch at a time, or wait, you can take like the 20 bundles of carrots and take them to one place and sell not only them, but all your radishes and all your lettuce, and in 10 minutes be done. I mean, that seems like a great arrangement. Yeah. So, and one of the other advantages of this is that, similar to farmers markets, since it would maintain this idea of producers selling directly to buyers, there's not a middleman, and so the producers hopefully are getting more of the final purchase price for their product than if they had middlemen involved. So that's something that they're hoping to get up and running.
Okay. Yeah, you talked. Those are some of the long-term plans for Happy Day Local. Are there other aspects about it that they kind of have in the future for it?
Well, there's some really big thinking involved in this that's fascinating. One of the hopes is to create systems and processes with Happy Day Local that could be replicated in other parts of the country. Another piece of this is just finding ways to reduce the amount of fossil fuels it takes to get produce to market. Yet another piece of it is encouraging producers to use more environmentally friendly practices. I think there's thought that everybody is doing the best they can to do a lot of things that are environmentally friendly, but just promoting as much of that as possible. So there's a lot of far-reaching philosophy behind all of this.
Yeah. Okay. You talked to one of the local suppliers of Happy Day Local, Big Canyon Beef.
Yes.
And for a company like that, what are the advantages for them of being in business with Happy Day Local?
Well, and I'm going to answer this question kind of from the perspective of both Happy Day and Big Canyon Beef, because it's kind of blended. So Big Canyon Beef is located about 18 miles north of Nez Perce. So they're a local company, and the beef that they're providing to Happy Day is raised with a number of environmentally friendly practices. So the cattle are raised in low density environments. It varies from depending on the time of year. But one of the things that they do with the cattle is at certain times of year, they're actually being fed in fields that have already been harvested. And so the manure from the cattle helps fertilize the fields, and that helps with the soil. So I think that they are, very appreciative, by the way, of, all of their suppliers. So I want to, but I think that they see potential to have ingredients that are, or I think they see potential to have more reliability in their supply chain because it is local. I think they see the potential for maybe fresher ingredients. They really want to have things that are affordably priced and really taste good and are nutritious.
Yeah, there you go. You wrote a feature earlier in the month about Art Schulteis.
Yes.
So
yes.
you've kind of been in the food production world here the last couple of weeks, and it's maybe something that the rest of us don't always think about is where our food comes from. Have you been thinking about it more lately?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that in all forms of production, there's a lot of hard work. There's a lot of science that goes into it. Art Schulteis's farm, they do a lot of high-tech things to fine-tune exactly, how much fertilizer their crops get. So there's a lot of science, and then there's also just a lot of manual labor that goes into producing our food. So I think you're right that a lot of us take for granted having food on our plate, and we don't really think about how much work it takes to get there, and really how important it is to figure out how everybody who's involved in that production can be fairly compensated and still end up with a price that is fair for consumers. It's amazingly complex.
Yeah. You mentioned it. This and your story makes it clear that for Tobe Finch that this is he called it a spiritual journey in your story.
Yes.
And what's kind of his thinking there? Tell us a little bit more about his spiritual journey here.
Well, I think that this has been a process for him where he has been praying constantly, and during the pandemic and now. And he has also had a very long ongoing conversation with his brother William about they have a very long conversation about their faith. And his brother was listening to a gentleman by the name of John Paul Jackson, who in 2008, 2012 was talking about how there was going to be a perfect storm involving crises on numerous fronts, including with climate and the economy. So his brother was listening to that around 2017, 2018. Much of what he said came true during COVID, but Tobe and William had been talking about this for a number of years. And during that conversation, William had been talking about how they really needed to start producing their own food. And Tobe had been kind of overwhelmed by that because while Tobe has lots of expertise, food production really wasn't something that was in his wheelhouse. And so at any rate, the pandemic rolled around, and once again, much of what he and his brother had been talking about came true. And now Tobe is seeing, the hand of God guide him as he figures out how to navigate in this new environment. He feels that God was very involved in helping him identify the warehouse where Happy Day Local is. He felt God was very much involved in helping him figure out to purchase the food. So he really feels as if, God is working in this. And he feels as if God is working in this in ways that go beyond food. He feels like people's minds and souls are being healed through some of this work that's going on around getting wholesome food to people, regardless of their income level, at a fair price. He feels like people from different political philosophies, different viewpoints are collaborating around this and creating connection and relationship at a time when we're seeing a lot of fractured relationships in our country. And so he really sees this as a potential, a way that we can strengthen communities and really get to a better place. So it's pretty uplifting in that way.
Well, interesting. Elaine, thanks for joining us. Anything else come to mind that you might want to mention before we sign off here?
Well, other than the fact that I think it's really important work, and it's pretty exciting to see it happening right here in the Lewiston-Clarkston Valley.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. Thanks for joining us, and be sure to check out Elaine's story in Sunday's Tribune. And thanks for joining us for the Lewiston Tribune Podcast. We'll be back next week with another topic. And until then, have a great day.